I don't know about y'all, but the All-Star game wasn't really that impressive. It was just an ordinary butt whipping by the West. And the only thing that I liked about the All-Star game was the fact that Shaq can dance with the greatest dance team in America, the Jabberwockies. Shaquille O'Neal, bam, bam, and that was very impressive. And what was so great about the All-Star game, or should I say, what was one of the great moments about the All-Star game, was that Kobe and Shaq shared the MVP. They were both named the co-MVP of the 2009 All-Star Game in Phoenix, which just makes me think about those great Laker days. But you know what? They're over, guys. Now that the NBA All-Star Weekend is done, everybody's talking about, man, who's gonna go into the playoffs? There are lots of teams in the mix. But you know what? I got you. I'm gonna give y'all my opinions about each team that's going to go into the East. Number one in the East, I'm going to tell you, it's going to be the Celtics. Why? Because of the big three. Every time those big three players, Ray Allen, Kevin Garnett, and Paul Pierce, whenever they have to play a big game, they, I don't know what happens to them, but they start playing like their life is on the line and they're not going to lose. Second, I'm going to give it to Cleveland. Why? Because of LeBron James. He is probably the youngest player to ever take a team single-handedly to the playoffs for the last 2 years. Third, I'm going to give it to Miami. And the only reason why I'm giving it to Miami is because Dwayne Wade, a veteran, with all those rookies, he's going to make all of them play good. And take them to the third spot. Fourth, I'm going to say is Atlanta. Why? Because of Joe Johnson. Joe Johnson doesn't have the star quality of Wade. That's why I'm putting them down. See, Atlanta has too many young players, and I don't think that they're going to match up to the level of Miami. Fifth, I'm going to definitely give it to Detroit, because Detroit, they are a veteran team. When you have Rasheed Wallace, when you have Richard Hamilton, and of course when you put in the mixture of the young point guard Stuckey, you're going to get a team going straight to the fifth, because they're not as good as the big three, but they're definitely going to make it somewhere around the fifth or sixth. Now, for my sixth spot, I'm going to give it to Orlando, because Orlando, they lost Jameer Nelson. Right now, they're in the third spot, but they're going to dwindle down. They're not going to go so down to the part where they're going to go out of the playoffs, but they're going to be around somewhere around the sixth. That's my guess. Seventh, I'm going to give it to New Jersey, because New Jersey has got Vince Carter and Devin Harris. Devin Harris is a quick, lightning point guard. Vince Carter is one of those slashers, slashing, dunking, shooting. But I know he's past his prime, but they'll make it into the playoffs, probably around 7th. Now, 8th, I'm going to take a risk here. It's going to be my team. Yeah, that's right, the Knicks. I know that there are a lot of Knicks haters out there, because, the Knicks haven't gone nowhere for years now. But you know what? They have too much young talent. And I think that if they learn how to play defense a little better, they'll definitely have a shot to make it to the playoffs. Alright, guys, for the West, it's definitely going to be the Lakers taking the first spot. Why? Because of Kobe. And you know what? That's all I'm going to say. For the second team, I'm going to say San Antonio. That is the only team that I believe that can stop the Lakers from ever reaching the championship. Third, I'm going to give it to the Denver Nuggets. Why? Because I like the duo of Chauncey Billups and Carmelo Anthony. I think they're going to be really, really hard to beat to compete for the third spot. Fourth, I'm definitely giving it to Portland. Why? Because Portland, there's something about Portland that they win a lot. When you have Brandon Roy, when you have Jared Bayless, when you have LaMarcus Aldridge, and also when you have Greg Oden, soon to be one of the greatest centers, you have a very dangerous team. Fifth, I'm going to put fifth maybe Houston. Because, even though they get hurt a lot, Houston still has a great team with their own big three, Tracy McGrady, Ron Artest, and Yao Ming. I think they'll make it good enough to go fifth. Sixth, I'm going to give it to Dallas. Because Dallas, when you have Dirk Nowitzki, I know that the Jet is out, but I think they'll be able to make it as a sixth spot. Seventh, I'm going to give it to New Orleans. For all those New Orleans fans, I am so sorry for y'all, because I was thinking that maybe New Orleans would be at least in the top 4 seeds of the West, but for some reason they're not playing too good, and I don't think they are. I think that they're going to be somewhere around the 7th. Now for the 8th, I'm going to give it to the Phoenix Suns. Why? Because when you mix Nash, when you mix Stoudemire, when you mix Shaq in the picture with Leandro Barbosa, you have not a great team, but a good enough team to make it to the 8th. Alright guys, let's switch back to the baseball. We have lots of teams right now warming up their players to start spring training. And I'm going to give y'all a heads up. Teams to look out for in the AL East and also in the NL East. Now, my prediction. The AL East team to beat, you would say it's Tampa Bay. No, but my team, the New York Yankees, are going it. They're going to win it this year. Why? Because they finally got smart in their spending. They got CC Sabathia. They got AJ Burnett. And plus, they got the first baseman, Mark Teixeira, who's probably going to hit 40 home runs, drive in 100 RBIs. I'm guessing CC is probably going to run around somewhere from maybe 15 to 18 games. Probably have about 5 losses. I'm guessing AJ Burnett is probably going to be somewhere around the range of 12 wins. But you know what? That's all what we need. We know, Yankee fans, that we need some starters. Not batters, but speaking of batters, when you mix A-Rod, Jeter, when you mix all those great players, you're going to have one team to beat in the AL East. Now for the NL East, I'm sadly to say, but the Mets are the team to beat in the East. Why? Because they finally have what they needed for the past, 2 years? They finally got a great closer. Well, speaking of great, this guy is the record-saving closer of all time, Francisco Rodriguez. The Mets got him for I think a pretty great price, because Francisco, I thought that he was staying back in LA, but you know what? The Mets is getting too much money, and that are my 2 teams to look out for in the AL East and the NL East. You guys hear that? That means that's the end of the round. Alright guys, if you have any comments about what I should say, just leave them below. Until next time, I'm Felix, and this is the end of Sports Knockout.